live. Not yet. Now we're live. So, blessings to everyone. Today we will be talking about the Israelite history before the revision of the Deuteronomy writers' history. Okay, so um, for those of you guys that don't know, or for those of you guys who haven't heard from me in a long time, it has been a long time since I've done a video. But we're talking about the documentary hypothesis, which states that there are four traditions that contribute to the Pentateuch, as the Christians call it, or the Jewish Torah. Okay, and that's the Yahwehist, the Elohim tradition, the Deuteronomy tradition, and the priestly tradition. Okay. And so I just want to give a heads up to anyone. I got to do my disclaimer that a lot of the things that are going to be said in this video are not they're not accepted in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. You might have a problem with some of the things that I'm going to say. You might think, I'm challenging the Bible. It's not my intention to really challenge the Bible. It's my intention to prove that it's historically accurate. It was just mixed and jumbled, and the facts are there. It's just mixed and jumbled. Another thing that I wanted to do, or another thing, strong belief that I have, is that the documentary hypothesis proves or it helps settle the problem that many people have with contradictions in the Bible. So I'm not saying that the Bible is not accurate. I'm saying that the way that it's written in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is not historically accurate. And it has been proven that that some of the things that I'm going to tell you today, you're gonna get a shock out of it. So I just want to let you know about the shock factor. I want to bless who's ever watching. I see that there are a couple of people watching. I don't know who y'all are, but blessings to you. Post a comment or something. Let me know who you are and what you think about this video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our channel also. So let's get down to it. Israelite history. As you guys know, that according to the documentary hypothesis, a J tradition or a Yahweh's tradition, and there's an Elohim tradition or an E tradition. These two traditions, they tell us that Yahweh and El were not the same deity, and that's a really hard fact to kind of excuse the baby in the background. I forgot to tell y'all about that. So Yahweh and El were originally two different deities. And I'm trying to see how I'm gonna bring it to you. Okay, we'll just say it like this. We know for sure that Noah worshiped Yahweh, and if you read the Bible, it literally tells you that the Ark of Noah landed on Mount Ararat. Does anybody know where Mount Ararat is? Mount Ararat is in modern day Turkey. Okay, so the worship of Yahweh comes from modern day Turkey. Now, the worship of El, a lot of people don't believe that El was an actual deity. But with every of the Ugarit text, the Ugarit is considered the Baal cycle. Ancient manuscript, I don't know if it's a manuscript or a clay text, but look it up on Google, the Ugarit text. It talks about Baal, who Baal was, and how El and Yahweh were connected later, but Mesopotamian deity, Babylon and Mesopotamia are kind of different. Okay, Abraham. Abraham, the Bible tells us clearly that Abraham is from Ur of the is Babylonian. It's in Babylon. That there was a migration uh from from Mesopotamia. Yahweh told Abraham or Abram to leave his home to go. He didn't know where he was going. Okay. So let's read what Genesis chapter 11. This is in Christian Bibles now. Genesis chapter 11, starting at verse 27. It says, "Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah became Nahor and Haran father Terah in the land of his nativity, and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. And Lot, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, they went forth with her." You don't say it, okay? But it says, "And they went forth with them." Who is them? In order to figure out who is them, we're going to skip to Genesis and verse 7. It says, "And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land." Why do they need to tell us that the Canaanite and the Perizzite were in the land? Because this is the them that Terah went with. They migrated with the land of Canaan. So it was Terah's idea to migrate to Canaan. Here you don't see anything about Yahweh talking to Abram or talking to Terah. Okay? So and his family went with the Canaanites from the land of Ur, from Ur of the Chaldees, to the land to go into the land of Canaan. So it was Terah's idea to go to Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So they stopped. And then came into the land of Canaan. So Terah says, "We're going to go to Canaan," but he stops in Haran. Then Abraham leaves Haran to actually get to Canaan. Okay. So it's Haran. I mean, it's Terah who brings, I'm going to repeat it. I'm sorry. It's Terah who tells Abram, who brings Abram and his family to go to Canaan. He gave him the idea, but they only got as far as Haran. Something happened, and Terah died. Then Abraham got up from there and decided to go to the land of Canaan. By the time Abram and Lot get to the land of Canaan, the Canaanites and the Perizzites are already there. Okay, so the migration has already taken place. Okay, so in the Chaldees, El is the deity of the Mesopotamians and the Chaldeans. Okay, so how do we see this in the Bible? Let's go to Genesis chapter 14. And we're going to talk about the famous Melchizedek. Okay? Remember, it's already been stated that Yahweh and El are different deities. So even though we'll see that Abram is building altars, for instance, to the Lord, as the Christian Bible says, historically speaking, he would have never come in contact with the name of Yahweh, with Yahweh as a deity. Okay, so let's see who he worships. Genesis chapter 14 and verse 18 says, "And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. In the Hebrew, it's El Elyon. So what you'll notice is El is all over the Bible. The name of El is everywhere in the Christian and Jewish Bible. Okay. So, but you might not catch it because it says God. And so whenever you see God, it's either El, Elohim, Elohe, something like that. Okay. It's always El though. El is the proper name though. Elohim is a later development or a later, how do you say, a conjugation of the name El. Okay. It's the noun form, not the noun form. Yeah. It's a substance now. So we'll keep going though. In verse 19, and he blessed him, Melchizedek blessed Abram and said, blessed be Abram of El Elyon, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be El Elyon, which has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave Melchizedek tithes of all. So I do gotta let you know that the concept of tithing originates in the religion of El. It's an offering of El. Okay. So you're gonna see this concept all over the place. All right. So we see a lot of mixing here when it comes to the name of El and Yahweh. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take you to the verses where we can see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob worshiping El. Okay. So Melchizedek is the first. Then you have Genesis chapter 16. Genesis chapter 16 and verse 13. To give you a little context, Abram or Sarai is still barren. She's not able to give a child. And so she gives, listen to this closely, she gives the idea to Abram, hey, why don't you take the maid and have a child with her? And that way your name will continue. So when Hagar gets pregnant, she becomes very proud, and and Sarah doesn't like it. So Sarah begins to oppress her, and so Hagar runs away. And so Hagar, when she runs away, an angel comes to her and says, "What's wrong with you?" And she tells her, "I'm being oppressed by my mistress." And you know what? I'm gonna go because I want to read the whole text to myself. Not read it because it's a long text. So she goes. The angel finds her, tells her, "Go back and sorry, wrong book. Genesis chapter 16 and verse 13 is where we're going to stop at. So Genesis chapter 16, starting at verse 9, it says, the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, notice that it says that twice. The angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly so that they will not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, it says that 3 times now, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard you. Now, something that we need to understand about biblical times is that in biblical times, here it says, you shall call his name Ishmael, El. You'll notice that at the end of that name, El is there. But it says, because the Lord has heard your affliction. Now, remember, El and Yahweh are two different deities. So it's not Yahweh's name who's at the end of his son's name, but it's El's name. Okay? But we're going to keep going. Ishmael is his name because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man, and his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brothers. Verse 13. Then she, meaning Hagar, called the name of the Lord. Listen to this. She called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are El Roi. You are El who sees. For she said, have I also seen him who sees me? Okay. So she called out the name, and she didn't call on the name of Yahweh. She called El Roi. El Roi is a title of El. God sees me. El. Okay. El sees me is what she said.
So okay. Nobody spoke to her then?
El spoke to her, supposedly. It wasn't Yahweh that spoke to her. It was El that spoke to her. Okay. So Genesis chapter 17 and verse 1. It says, when Abram was 99 years old, it says, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, what did he say? I am El Shaddai. Wait a minute. Hold on. The Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai. Yahweh and El are two different deities. Okay? Yahweh and El are two different deities. Again, this is not based on the documentary hypothesis theory. This is based on the Ugarit text, which tells us that El was a separate deity. Okay. So Genesis chapter 21 and
the whole Bible, it's talking about El. So where's the Yahweh in the Bible?
Hold on, I'll get there in a minute. So what we're talking about right now is the patriarchs. We'll get to where Yahweh comes in a minute. Okay. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 21 and verse 33. Genesis chapter 21 and verse 33. So it says like this, then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called God and everything, like they tell us, like Christianity does. Oh, you have to see God in everything. That's what they did to El. They saw El in everything. Okay. So next we're going to go to Genesis chapter 23. My daughter has a lot to say. Yeah, Daddy loves it. Hello to whoever is watching. There's like one person watching. Hello, blessings to you. Okay, Genesis chapter 28 and verse 3. This is Isaac. Let me go back so that you don't think I'm telling the story. Genesis chapter 28 and verse 1. It says, then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, you shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be an assembly of peoples. And verse 4, and give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land in which you are a stranger, which God gave to Abram. So Isaac blesses Jacob in the name of El. Okay? Isaac blesses Jacob in the name of El. So let's read a little bit further and see who Jacob worships. Now, you won't see a lot of texts on Isaac. There's not a lot written about him, right? So you won't see a lot about Isaac. Isaac didn't really do anything that was, I guess he didn't do, yeah. So skip down in chapter 28 to verse 10. It says, now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head. And he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending. So in verse 13 it says, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, what did he say? I am the Lord, God of Abraham. Who is the God of Abraham? El. And God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. Who is the God of Isaac? El. Okay. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. Okay. We're going to skip down to verse 19. Made a vow saying, if God will be with me. Wait a minute. Okay. If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set as a pillar before God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give you a tenth or a tithe. So he's reinforcing El worship. Okay. So next we're going to go to, we're still on Jacob now. Now we're just going to stay with Jacob.
So would that be considered as in, I'll give you what you want, but give me a sacrifice, give me a tithe, an exchange?
So let me give you a little history on the tithe. The tithe was a tax in Mesopotamia. So it was a kingdom tax.
The law of Hammurabi?
Yeah. The law of Hammurabi shows us that the tithe was a kingdom tax. But because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were not in Babylon or in Mesopotamia, they gave their tithes to, God or El. Okay. Genesis chapter 35. Genesis chapter 35. And then after chapter 35, that's where I leave it. It should be enough to prove that, prove the point. So, verse 1, Genesis chapter 35 and verse 1. It says, Then God said to Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make an altar there to God. That word right there is El, who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau, your brother. And Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, Put away the foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves, and change your garments. So, El worship was monotheistic. They believed in worshiping El, and that was it. Okay? Verse 3, Then let us arise and go to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to El, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me in the way which I have gone. Skip down to verse 11. Nope. Go back up to verse 9. Genesis chapter 35 and verse 9. It says, And God appeared to Jacob again, and he called from Padam Aram and blessed him. And he came from Padam Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, Your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel. So the name of El is put on Jacob, Israel. But Israel shall be your name. So he called his name Israel. Verse 11, And God said to him, I am El Shaddai. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. One more. Verse 15. It says, And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke to him Beth-el. Notice that that's twice. There's twice in the scriptures already. So there is a verse. Let me look for it quickly. Where Jacob, he names another place. There it is. That's in Genesis chapter 33 and verse 20. So Genesis chapter 33 and verse 20, it says, Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel. El Elohe Israel. Okay? This should be enough to prove that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not worship Yahweh. They worshiped El. But there's one more verse that can prove this point really well, and it's in Exodus chapter 6. We're going to start at verse 2. Exodus chapter 6 and verse 2. Exodus chapter 6 and verse 2. It says, And God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yahweh, or I am the Lord. Verse 3, here's the part, you guys. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But by my name Yahweh, I was not known to them. It says it clearly right there. Exodus chapter 6 and verse 3.
Can you read it again?
Oh, sure. Of course I can read it again. It says, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But by my name, Yahweh, I was not known to them. Now, understand that this is an English translation. So, because there is no verb to be in Hebrew, there's only to exist. The verb to be does not exist in Hebrew. So it's possible that I can say, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But my name, Yahweh, was not known to them.
So yeah, Yahweh is there. That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. So they did not know the name Yahweh. Again, this proves that they could not have come into contact with Yahweh. They didn't know who Yahweh was. Okay? You got a question? I see you thinking really hard.
So basically, right here stating that he was known by the name of El.
He was known by the name of El.
But his real name.
He was not known by Yahweh.
By his real name.
Okay.
So
is okay, let me what we have to understand, I'm gonna take you back. Yahweh and El are two different deities. Okay. So somebody here who's writing it is trying to make them the same deity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
saying that Yahweh had different names.
They're trying to say that Yahweh had different names. Or that Yahweh and El are the same deity. Not that Yahweh had different names, because there's only one name, it's El. It's not like they're different. Yeah. El with titles. So somebody here is trying to merge Yahweh and El. Okay. But this proves that the patriarchs did not know Yahweh.
I wonder if they did that too, so the patriarchs can belong under, Moses or something.
Say what?
I wonder if they did that for the safety of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yes. Because most nations had the tendency to exalt the people who started their ancestors. So they wanted to exalt their ancestors. So they said, "Oh, well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob worshipped Yahweh. They just didn't know that name." Mm-hmm. In actuality, they're two different deities.
So they're saying, "Oh, it's just the same God."
Yep, it's just the same God. Okay. Okay. So, the book of Genesis and even the book of Exodus proves that they didn't know Yahweh. But that's not what it looks like, because in the book of Genesis, the name of Yahweh is all over that book. It's everywhere in that book. But the verses, if you're reading the verses tell you that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not worship Yahweh. They worshiped El. And what we have to understand is that even if Moses wrote the Pentateuch, like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam claim, he was not living at the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses is some 10, 20 generations after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he is taking stories. Okay? Basically, that's what he's doing. These are stories or histories. Even if Yahweh revealed it to him, it's still a story from somebody else. He's later than Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yep. In history. Okay? So this is just mind-blowing. This is kind of like a foundation, okay?
That pretty much settles it because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't do much for the kingdom.
Right. It was more or less for them.
Yeah, exactly. How they were.
There was no kingdom mindset when it comes to the deities. They didn't really have. Well, El was the king of kings. And we'll talk about the. I'll do another video. I'll do a study, and I'll talk to you about who El is. I might as well do it a little bit. No, I don't have a lot of information, so I will do a study on who El is, and I will do another video on that. Okay, so I'm going to end this segment right here because it's the end of the subject. We're about to go into a different subject. So I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like and write some comments. Write your questions. Write your objections. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of objections to this. But again, this is me putting history, archaeology with what's in the scriptures. Okay? So don't hate. And you be blessed. All right?